The Company of Wolves reimagines Little Red Riding Hood as a werewolf story. It has a fantasy setting unlike most films in the subgenre, but that doesn't stop it from having gnarly transformation scenes and strong sexual themes. Let's have a look and see if we want to howl at the moon. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always, what big eyes he has, is Tim.
Oh,
This is a horror movie podcast. We get together and talk about a horror movie. It's that simple. We had a vote on our Patreon, as we do every month, and this was 3 werewolf movies that were up for vote, and the winner, just by a smidge, it was very close, was 1984's The Company of Wolves. So that is what we're going to talk about today. I had never seen this. In fact, when I started watching it, I realised I knew very little about what this was, because it definitely became something that I was not expecting. So we'll get into all that. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get to the spoilers, and if you are enjoying the show, please do hit the like button on YouTube. It helps out a bunch if you do, or share the podcast around. Plus, you can also get bonus content by supporting us over on Patreon, but I'll tell you more about all that stuff at the end of the show. So yeah, this is more of a fairy tale, like sort of like turned horror. It's like it's basically Little Red Riding Hood, but jazzed up and kind of, turned into also a werewolf story.
yeah.
That's the gist of it.
Or probably say multiple werewolf stories. I don't know if you'd really call it like an anthology movie.
Well, just
like,
yeah. So you say that, like when the granny first started telling the first story, I thought, wait, is this just an anthology? And I guess it kind of is, but like the main story is still very much the main story as well.
Yeah.
So
I think that's one thing that we're gonna have to discuss. But I think the structure to this movie is really bizarre. Like, it starts off modern day with a girl who dreams, and then it goes into like this fairy tale, and then you have the people in the fairy tale telling their own story. So it's like a story within a story within a dream, and it's so weird.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with that. And to be fair, all the stories that are told either directly foreshadow or symbolize something that's going on in the main story. So it's not an anthology, other than the fact that people are telling stories. And there's definitely big gaps between the stories, whereas I feel like an actual anthology would be like, okay, story's done, on to the next one. Whereas this is a bit different than that. But it's definitely got a mix of a lot of things in there. As I understand it, this was based, obviously, as I said, Red Riding Hood, but like there was specifically a short story that was like a new take on Red Riding Hood that was in a collection of shorts. I just saw that when I was looking up the movie after I watched it. So that's what this movie's actually based on, and it's I mean, we'll get into like what it actually is, but yeah.
And I don't think you mentioned it, but this is directed by Neil Jordan, who is probably best known for Interview with a Vampire, which I feel like you can definitely see kind of the similarities between the two.
I've not actually seen that movie, so I have no idea. I have seen Greta, though.
Did he do that?
He did Greta. He's still working today. He did Greta. The other movie that I recognize on his list that I've heard of is The Crying Game. I've never seen it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, same.
Other than that, oh no, I tell a lie. He did another vampire movie, actually, Byzantium.
Ooh, okay. I don't think I know anything about that one.
I've not seen it, but I remember when it came out, it being it's Saoirse Ronan and Gemma Arterton is in that one. So I think it's kind of an artsy vampire story.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think that's what it is.
That would make sense. I mean, just judging by this movie and Interview with a Vampire, he definitely seems to like that kind of like dark fairy tale, like nature, like with almost kind of like you can see like hints of like forbidden romance or something kind of in his work. I would think so.
Yeah. So, I mean, had you seen this before? Was this the first time?
I did, yeah. It was a while ago, but I think I had heard it mentioned on a podcast or a list or something before. Maybe someone was talking about werewolf movies, and I'm always interested in checking more werewolf stuff out, because I feel like, it's not, the kind of subgenre. Yeah, I feel like we don't get like a ton of great ones, so I'm always on the hunt to see like any hidden gems or whatever. So I probably had watched this a couple of years ago, and I didn't remember like the complete story, but I remembered like enough like bits and pieces to be like, oh yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, sorry, I was just looking something up. I was checking to see if there was any dirt and why the lead actress in this stopped acting very quickly, because she's only in a couple of things.
Interesting.
But a quick Google just said that her film's all bombed, and she just kind of decided to call it quits. I was wondering.
It's a shame. I didn't think she was bad in this.
No, certainly not. But I was wondering if she was like a diva or something, and everyone hated working with her or something like that. I was curious, but nothing was showing up to that effect. But so
she only she insisted on only working with wolves.
It's kind of a weird one to get into, because I did not know. I didn't even know this was. I mean, it feels weird calling it a period piece, because that's not quite right either. To be honest, it's more just fantasy land set inside the dream. But
yeah, like if you would have told me, I would have thought that this was like, I don't know, like 1300s or something. And then there's like one scene though where a car just pulls up, and I'm like, oh, okay.
There's more to it than that though, because that's like a story within the reality. So I don't know if that's. Sure. I don't think cars just exist in this world, is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
I think that's an intentionally surreal thing that. I mean, we can get into it when we're actually talking about it, but I yeah, there's definitely weird things where, because the whole thing's set as this girl's asleep in like present day, and like various things in her room, like various stuffed animals and toys, kind of appear in some form or another inside the fantasy world where the Red Riding Hood sort of tale is taking place. So. So the car could kind of just be a symbol like that, where it's something bleeding in from her reality. Sure. But I mean, there may be a bit more to it as well. But we'll get into all that. So yeah, before we say anything else, we'll just get to the main question here. Tim, what did you think of The Company of Wolves?
I enjoyed it. I do think there's a lot of weird stuff going on. I'm not sure if I necessarily even understand like every little thing that happens. So I mean, I guess part of the fun of talking about it will be maybe unpacking some of the stuff. But I mean, the big draw for me is I did like the werewolf stuff in this. I think there's like several cool like transformations and stuff. They're a little cheesy. Like obviously they're not. Doesn't seem like they're working with like a huge budget, and it's not something on the level of like American Werewolf in Paris.
Paris. It's a Freudian slip, Tim.
It's one of my favorites. It's nothing akin to American Werewolf in London or something like that. But I do think the transformation sequences are pretty cool, and they find like some fun, unique ways to convey the transformation. So honestly, with a werewolf movie, that's all you kind of need to do to win me over. If there's enough like cool werewolf stuff, I'm pretty happy. The rest of the stuff is kind of weird and surreal, but I think I kind of dig that vibe. But yeah, it's a lot more like weird and interesting than I remembered.
Yeah, this was kind of an odd one for me, because some of like what they do with werewolf transitions and things like that are really cool and really interesting in terms of how they've chosen to portray transformations. There's actually some really great practical effects at some points in this. I also can get on board with the symbolism that a lot of the movie's going for. I mean, the whole thing is basically just an allegory for a young woman's sexual and her the end of her innocence, we'll say, like the sort of the idea that she's at a point where she's going to start wanting to be attractive and be attracted to other people, and all the dangers that come with that. Everything in it's a parable of some kind for different elements of that.
She's in heat.
She's in, for the first time in her life, she is in heat, yes. But then some of it's kind of empowering in a sense where it's like, no, we don't have to be the helpless victim. We can be the strong one. We can be the one who knows what's going on, and we can do this. But there's also parts where it's like, no, but there's real danger here, and it's just, so... and I think the ending kind of like really plays into that. So I mean, obviously we'll save that for spoilers for the most part, but so I appreciate a lot what this is doing, and I really like a lot of the practical effects and stuff. But I do have to say, I didn't particularly enjoy watching a lot of it. I found myself kind of bored because, simply put, I'm not that into fantasy. I
was gonna say, this isn't your type of thing.
No, I don't particularly like fairy tale stuff unless it's got a very specific kind of time. Because I famously, well, I say famously, but between us two, famously, I quite like Gretel and Hansel, which obviously is a bit fairy tale-esque. But I like that because it was so beautifully shot. And this isn't a bad-looking movie by any means. It's definitely a movie full of practical sets and things like that. It has a pretty decent style, but not so much enough where like the cinematography is doing a lot of like fancy or not even fancy. Sure. Just like I think in Gretel and Hansel the cinematography is like what like gets like what makes me care so much about that movie as I watch it because everything's so goddamn beautiful. Here, the cinematography and direction is perfectly fine. It is working, but it's not like enough. It's not being artsy enough to win me over on that alone. I do think there's some really cool, interesting, weird choices. Again, like I say, with the werewolf transformations and practical effects or little bits of quirky humor or whatever. But I don't, like effectively it's Little Red Riding Hood stretched out to 90 plus minutes, and that's why there's all these other stories kind of sprinkled in, because there's really not much to the start of that story. It's just girls going to see her grandmother, but there's a lot in this movie before that, but so much of it is these stories that are kind of these other werewolf tales that are kind of, maybe they happened in this world, or maybe they're kind of fabricated, but they kind of like, there's like part truths in them to kind of warn her for stuff later, so on and so on. Like, I think that's a fun idea doing it, but it does mean that every time we come back to the main story, it does kind of feel like we're just, there's not much momentum going forward. It's kind of just, oh, a boy kind of likes her. He wants to go on a walk with her. It's not, I don't think it's that compelling scene to scene, I guess is what I'm saying. There's high points for sure, and I can see why it's a cult favorite. I can see why it's got such a dedicated like fan base who thinks it's way underrated. This definitely falls into I can see it, but it's not for me. Even though I do appreciate kind of the themes that it's playing with in the subtext, but yeah.
That's totally fair. I think, to me, I think it had a good length to it where I could see myself being a bit more bored if it was like 2 hours. But to me, there was enough like werewolf stuff sprinkled in that it was like, all right, if I was starting to lose interest, it's like, oh, here's like another werewolf story or something.
Sorry, Tim, I'm giggling because you said I think it had a good length to it, which is just the way you phrased that was so sexual. And I realize we're about to talk about a movie that's thematically about a girl's sexual awakening. So get ready for a mature conversation when I'm giggling at Tim saying you like the length of it.
Tee
hee, indeed. It's funny though because like I didn't even know it was doing Red Riding Hood immediately. It was basically once the granny started like knitting like a red thing, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Wait just a minute. I think I know where this is going.
Son of a bitch.
But that's how little I knew going in. I didn't even, like, when it started in present day, I thought it was all set in present day. I had no idea that it was going to then, like, go do into, like, a, dream sequence. And even when it did, I thought the dream sequence would just be a scene. I thought, oh, she's going to wake up in a minute, and then the movie will progress from there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious if, I don't know, if it would have helped the movie to have a little bit more time in the real world, because I feel like you literally don't know anything about the character. It's like the opening scene in present day is probably like 1 minute, 2 minutes. Is basically just like a little sister or something is knocking on her sister's door, and she's just like inside. But
importantly, Tim, it's Big Sister, because the whole point is the Big Sister's already grown up and thinks she's a brat. So the whole point is the main character's the young one who's not grown up yet. So that's kind of that's like the one key detail we get out of that opening scene.
Yeah.
Although her Big Sister's also really mean. When she's knocking on the door, she's like, "Hey, get up, you little brat! I hate you, but I don't want you anyway. It's Mum that wants you." Like, what? Yeah, why are you talking like that?
It's really strange because we just have, like, this is our introduction to the characters. Like, we literally know nothing about them, and it just instantly goes into like yeah, the dream world. And yeah, I mean, I guess the story wants us to focus on her dream self, which is probably pretty similar to the real self or anything. But I don't know. I wonder if it would have helped to maybe have a little more context or something in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have it, at least the much that it does, because especially, again, we can't say anything yet, but the ending kind of like adds a sort of layer to the metaphor that's going on. And I think maybe a few more scenes where maybe because basically our main character effectively is already asleep at the start of the movie, so we never actually get to meet the real person. And maybe I assume that's intentional. Maybe in the written version, like that's kind of the point, is that we never, it is all the metaphor. It isn't really about who she is. It applies to all young girls, but I think it might have worked for me to sort of like understand what the real person's going through a little bit, like the more realistic side of it, so that like all the fantastical stuff had more direct like context and like, okay, I can see why she's thinking about this type of scenario. I can see why she's thinking about this or that. I think I would have liked. I think that had grounded it more for me, because I don't really like the fairy tale stuff as much. But obviously, that's not what this movie's going for. So I can't really sit here and say, they did it wrong. I'm saying which ways it would have worked better for me. Yeah.
No, I mean, I agree. I think, that probably would have helped it out a bit. And again, I still enjoy the movie, so I'm not saying that, it's bad or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It does just kind of throw you in. It's a little strange.
Yeah. David Warner's in the movie though. That's fun. I like David Warner.
Yeah, he's always a good guy to see.
Yeah. Of course, it's star of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze, and Supergirl, the movie. These are some of his hits. Also The Omen, which we've not done yet on the show, but I've got a sneaking suspicion that might be done soon. He's our father, both in the real world and in the dream world. Same with the mum. It's the same actress for both. Although I don't actually. This cast list is kind of a weird order. Where the hell's the mum on this?
I don't even remember much from the mum.
Was the mum? Is it just the one credited as mother? Yeah, it must be, because the father's just credited as father. There's no photograph though. Tussie. I don't think we get. Sorry, Tussie Silberg is the actress that plays her.
I don't even think we get many names other than the main character Rosaline.
No, we don't. It's all just kind of like granny, old priest.
The boy.
Yeah, the boy. The boy's shop. The boy's father, a young groom, huntsman. It's all just kind of simple descriptors rather than names.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I did recognize one other actor. Not like a big actor by any means, but the boy's father is played by Brian Glover, who I recognize because he's got a very distinct face and voice. He's from Alien 3, or he would be in Alien 3 a few years later.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. It's not that interesting. I didn't promise an exciting tidbit.
Oh, it's a movie of note.
Yeah, and obviously the big name that we've not said yet is the granny, who is Angela Lansbury, who most people will probably know from Murder, She Wrote. I have never seen an episode of that, though, so I didn't know that was her that was in that until I looked her up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, I didn't realize that was her, but yeah, I know her. I haven't seen the show either, but yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Do you know she only died in 2022?
Really?
She was 96. Like, because I was thinking watching this, like, oh, she's already an old woman here, and then I looked up, like, and it said she died in 2022, and I'm like, wait a minute, this was 1984, and she's already playing an old woman. Like, she like lived a long, long time. So,
good on you, Ange.
Hey, good on Ange. Spoilers then, I guess. I don't know if I've got much more to add.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a question, Tim. I was waiting for an answer, yes. That's how this works. All right, spoilers for The Company of Wolves. You have been warned. And just before we do actually start the spoilers, I'll just say, if you're thinking, oh, there's nothing to spoil, it's just Red Riding Hood, don't trust me, there's some changes to the original fairy tale. So there is spoilers to behold here, aside from anything else. So, I mean, I don't really think I want to go through this in order per se. I think it's maybe better to tackle like the 4 stories that are told, and then just kind of.
This is good because I don't think I could recount it in order.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Plus, there's maybe some weird specific moments. I mean, maybe we should mention like the first thing we see that I thought was just going to be one sequence in the dream, which is like, oh, she like dreams that her sister gets killed by wolves. Although the chase through the forest has her run into like all of her like stuffed animals, but they're human size. So she learns it her teddy bear, and she runs into this like doll she's got of like a man with a hat on his head or something. I don't even know what it was meant to be, but there's a bunch of like surrealist kind of visuals from that, and then the wolves get her.
Yeah, and the wolves, they're actual like real animals. I don't know. I couldn't really tell if they were actual wolves or if they just got like big dogs.
Yeah, they looked more like dogs to me than actual wolves. But admittedly, I'm no expert. But especially when they were being more placid at certain points later, I thought, oh, that's just a good dog. That's all that is. That's not a scary wolf.
If I had to guess, I would say that just at least for safety issues, they probably just use dogs.
Yeah,
I also think wolves are like quite big. I think.
Oh sure.
Yeah, like wolves are one of those animals that like you think, oh yeah, they're about the size of a dog, right? And then you see one in real life and it's like, oh no, that's pretty big.
I've never seen a wolf in real life, so I could not tell you.
I've seen plenty of coyotes, lots of coyotes around here.
I've seen some foxes, but they're smaller.
That's fun.
They're smaller than most dogs.
Yeah.
And all they like to do is eat your trash, so they're not that dangerous. They're just, I mean, they may be dangerous if they bite you because they may be diseased, but
right,
but they're not like inherently vicious.
I do like foxes. I think they're cute. But then I do want to mention too, like the dogs or wolves or whatever, they kind of have these like glowing eyes, which makes it for a nice little effect.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that the dog stayed still when they put the contacts in.
I wasn't sure if it was that or if they like, I don't know, shine something on their eyes or something.
Okay, it may have been
either way, they probably didn't like it.
Yeah, it may have even been a frame by frame optical effect or something, just painted over their eyes one frame at a time once they, locked in what shots they were using.
Yeah, hopefully that was the case.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah. Obviously it's 50-50 in terms of like, is it good that they just use like either dogs or wolves, because obviously they're not that spectacular other than the glowing eyes, which we mentioned. They're just regular beasts, right? Which is, it's kind of funny in a weird way, because when you start seeing the transformations, you're like, how, like they shrink as well into just regular size wolves.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But that said, though, you get away with using real animals, so it doesn't look bad from an effects point of view. Remember, I think it was Howling 4 where randomly they just used dogs for and it's like, no, these are meant to be werewolves. We've established what they look like, and yet all these wide shots, it's just a pack of dogs running around.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that doesn't work. But
like, is that a pug? Is there a pug in there?
Sorry, I think for reference here, what?
Oh no, you just like, okay.
I was just moving on. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Tim. Did you want to laugh? Did you want me to like?
I thought it was a funny joke, but
what maybe to stroke your ego a little bit there. Mostly, Tim, it wasn't so much that it was a joke that I didn't appreciate. It was more just I know what I wanted to move on to, so I thought I'll do it before I forget.
That's fair.
That's all it was. There was no ill will. No. So the death of her sister here, because at the end the dream world I think you get a couple of quick shots of her in her bed, kind of like tossing and turning, but because it stays in the dream world pretty much. And you see that her sister's died, and they're having the funeral, so we see their parents are the same and all the rest of it, and she goes to spend the night with her granny. Now, I think in the metaphor of the movie, the idea here is because initially I thought, oh, she's dreaming of her sister being killed because her sister's a bitch, and she just wants to imagine her dying, right? And I thought, fair enough, why not? But I think what it actually represents, given the context of the rest of the movie, is that this represents that her sister has already had her awakening, where she's now not necessarily sexually active. I don't really mean that, but just she's thinking about that now. She's now desiring that part of her life, kind of thing. She's already killed her innocence, I suppose, if you want to put it that way.
Although it would be really funny if they just cut to the real world and she was at her sister's funeral and she just like fell asleep.
I mean, I don't know what it says if you fall asleep at your sister's funeral.
It says you're sleepy. That's all.
Oh, does it? Yeah. The lack of caring. But yeah, so the whole idea here is that the parents have lost one daughter to adulthood, and the clock is ticking until the next one. And they constantly reference that throughout the movie. The dad makes jokes about, oh, it won't be that long till this one's You know, she's pretty. It won't be that long till someone snaps her up or takes her away, and he makes some jokes. And notably, the wife kind of, the mother kind of doesn't like hearing that, and is like, "Oh, you behave, you," and sort of splashes him with water. I think that's intentional as well. There's kind of like a divide in how they're looking at it.
Yeah, if this was like actually the real world in the past, whatever, 1100, 1200s or whatever, they probably already would have sold their daughter when she was 10 for like some chickens or something.
She'd be married already. She'd be married at like 12 or 13 for sure. This is definitely a fantasy world we're in here. But yeah, so the granny that night tells her a story after like giving her a lesson about like, hey, never eat a fallen apple, never trust a man whose eyebrows touch, which I thought to myself, hey, there's a lot of real people in the world with touching eyebrows. You're kind of throwing them under the bus here with this lesson.
What was so weird is that I never heard that little thing in terms of werewolf lore. But I am actually reading a werewolf book right now, and they actually mentioned that as well. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that's actually a thing, or maybe they're referencing this movie or something. I don't know.
When you say actually a thing, what you mean is that other werewolf stories have used it.
Right.
Not, people with monobrows is what I'm saying. Are secretly werewolves.
I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely gonna give people a second look if I see that.
Dear, I'm gonna have to get a little fake middle brow just to mess with Tim one of these days. Make him think I've went canine.
I'm gonna have to load up on silver bullets.
Oh dear. So that night the granny tells the story, or first story even. So yeah, just to sort of dive into these stories, because I'll kind of put each of them in context of where it is in the plot. But basically the granny stories are basically, watch out, men are beasts. If you go off the beaten path, the men will be dangerous and they'll be wolves. And the first story she tells, and again, they all fit into the theme of like a young woman becoming, someone
Old woman?
No, of a young woman, getting married or being with a man or exploring that part of their life. So the story she tells first is a young woman who's married a traveling man. So I don't know if he's a salesman or what, but he's not someone from the village that she lived in anyway, is the point. And it's like the night of their wedding, and she's being a little bit flirty. He's kind of looking at her all intense, like, oh, it's about to throw down. And, it's a little bit suggestive. He's kind of naked, but he's in the shadows. They indicate that things are about to go a certain way. But when he goes to, like, fix the door or something, or shut the door, it's a full moon outside.
Whoa. First, they...
What am I forgetting, Tim? Go on, what was it?
Well, they find a hedgehog in the bed.
Wait, you thought that was the important bit?
Well, that's why he opens the door, because he opens the door and just throws the hedgehog out.
Okay, fair enough. I forgot why he had to open the door. Yes. Apparently her little brother thought it would be funny to put a hedgehog in their bed. And he steps on the hedgehog, which is now on the floor. Yes.
Yeah. And then he goes, away with you, and throws him out the door. It was like, oh, poor hedgehog.
I could just hear dee 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 splat. That was music from Sonic, in case anyone didn't get the joke. Yeah. But he sees the full moon and he's like, oh no, I must go out for a minute. Nature is calling. So he says he's going for a piss, basically, right? That's what he says. And she waits, and then she keeps waiting. Days pass, and then apparently years pass, and she finds a new man to marry because this guy just disappeared. They think that wolves got him because she sees some wolves like outside the window. So some townsfolk look for him. They don't find him. So it's like, okay, he must be dead. Wolves got him. She marries someone else. Has kids. In fact, she has one kid, then two kids, then she has a third kid. Right? Time passes quite quickly here. She's now got a little litter of kids. And then one day, her first husband, who's clearly a wolf, comes back. He's got long hair now, though, and he basically stumbles in expecting to be fed, and is like, who are these kids? And I'm like,
it is kind of funny because he makes it seem like he's like, what? I was gone for a few days and you shack up with someone else. That's like, dude, you were gone for like years. What was I supposed to do?
I mean, going by the oldest kid, you must have been gone 4 years at least.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, probably a little bit more than that, but certainly 4 years at least. So he eats a little bit, but he throws over the table. He gets mad and says, oh, you've shacked up with someone else. He starts yelling at her and calling her a whore and all the rest of it. He hits her, and she sort of starts grabbing her kids and tries to sort of hold back for safety. And we get our first big effects scene where he starts to transform into a werewolf, where it does it differently, and it does it differently at different parts of the movie, because keep in mind, in these stories, they're not necessarily accurate to what the real world of the dream's going to be. So this one rips off his skin, and even this looked really good, actually, I thought.
I loved it, yeah.
Yeah, because he's like ripping off bits of the cheek and all that, but he's always got like part of his real face in the middle, of course. So the makeup was doing a great job. It was quick shots, and that's probably to hide, you know, the edges of like whatever they, you know, it's like, okay, it looks good for these 3 seconds, so we'll use those 3 seconds.
And like I think, yeah, at some point, you know, they show his like skeletal hand, and you can tell that it's not like moving or anything. So it's like, okay, yeah, probably just got a fake hand. But again, they're able to hide it well with like the editing and stuff.
Yeah, and then so I feel there's a lot of werewolf movies that have at least tried. Obviously, the famous ones, Werewolf in London, which has succeeded it. But that shot from the side where the mouth kind of like comes out to form a snout. This does that as well, but it does it after all the skin's been taken off. So you've got that sort of like, you know, like where you just see all the muscles and skeleton kind of look. And then it happens when it's in that shape, and it looks really different and weird, but kind of cool and different. And like, oh, like, yeah, okay. They were cooking with us. They had some ideas. I'm not mad at it.
That's good.
So, but just as he's done transforming, in comes the new husband, and just immediately like shotgun blasts his head off, and his head lands in, I think, is a big like bucket of milk, and the milk slowly tints red, and then his head floats up. And it's the one thing that's consistent in this movie actually is when you find like a body part of a werewolf that has been killed as a wolf, that body part will turn back into the human after they're dead, so the head becomes his head again. And all I could think was, but his skin all ripped off. How does this work? Like, does the skin grow back again? What's happening here?
Yeah. I mean, I thought this all looked great. I really like this sequence. From the transformation to the death, like, yeah, his head just landing in the milk, and then it just makes a really cool visual, seeing the white mixed with the red, and then having the wolf head sink down and the human head float up. Like, this is all great stuff. I love this. Yeah,
it's very distinct. It's very visual. You can tell what's going on very easily. It looks good. And then the husband gets mad and hits the wife himself, and is furious that another man was in the house, like that she's done something, that she is a whore in his eyes as well for inviting another man in. And again, I think this is one of the warnings of like, oh, if you're giving warnings to young women, it's like, because I think the granny even says, like, after when she's done telling the story, you know, the main character says, oh, I would never let a man strike me, and the granny's like, haha, they're very nice until they get what they want, but after they've had that, that's when the beast comes out. And she's basically implying that all men will get abusive after sex has happened, which is a very, I mean, I'm not saying it's inaccurate for a lot of people, but it's definitely pessimistic point of view. So again, this is like one big warning tale of like, hey, if you like want to like get married and have sex, like this is what it's going to lead to. It's going to lead to you being, because that's the other thing in this story. This woman does not like her kids. Like, she hates being a mother.
Oh yeah.
Like the little montage we get of her like just feeding the kids, like she's just annoyed they're crying. She's like, oh, like I need to hold you now. I need to, like, yeah. She's just miserable.
Which, to be fair, I've been there. It's especially when you have more than one, and it's if you're all by yourself and it's like, oh, one person wants this thing, and then you go to do it, then as soon as you're gone, the other one starts crying. You're like, okay, well, now what do you want? Like,
all right, okay. You have to tell me about having kids, Tim. I don't want kids, so I'm more than happy.
That's a shame, because I was gonna make you a proposal.
What proposal could you possibly make me, Tim?
I just thought it'd be interesting if we raised a kid together on the show.
On the show, we're going to document like every stage. Oh, Well, first of all,
They could be a Patreon tier. I don't know.
oh, Patreon. Who's giving birth to this child, Tim?
Flip a coin for it.
Oh, it's one of us.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think it'd be messed up to bring others into it.
Oh no, okay, no. That was me thinking you were going to get a sample and mix them together and then give it to a surrogate.
No.
You know, a woman who could actually give birth to someone.
Unless there's a patron member who has, you know, a void in their life that they need, a specific void they need filled by that.
So that's a very specific void.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh jeez. Okay, what I was saying is, the warning tale of like how miserable motherhood, marriage, how you'll be treated by the men if you go down this path. Like this is a tale of warning in more ways than one. So even you know, even if you take out the werewolf part, it's a tale of warning.
I wonder if Green Day was inspired by this movie. Because they have a song called Warning.
Very good.
So maybe they saw this movie and it's like, Warning, huh? That could be a song.
I feel like a lot of bands probably have songs named Warning. It's not that specific a title.
All right, name one other one.
Well, I don't know any, but like, the point is that I didn't instantly go, that's a Green Day reference.
Okay, well, maybe all the bands watch this movie.
But to learn the word warning is as if they'd never heard that anywhere else.
I also think, in Mega Man X4, whenever you get to the boss fight, they would have like big red flashing lights that would say like, warning, warning.
What is this bit? All right, the second story the granny tells young Red Riding Hood here. And this is the weirder one, and I actually had to go back 30 seconds to make sure I understood how this transitioned, because all of a sudden there's a car driving through the forest, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? And then Terrence Stamp's inside the car. Zod himself is inside the car, and like a young man from this world time period goes up to the car, and he's like a drug dealer. He gets a little bottle of some green liquid out, and he gives it to him and sort of says, off you go, but don't waste any. And the kid, or the young man I should say, puts a little bit of it on his hair, and it makes his chest hair grow. So I think I think the point of this was to show that men get their puberty from a dark source.
Okay.
You know, I think Terrence Stamp's meant to be a demon, or maybe even just Satan himself, and it's hey, all men have a little bit of the demon inside them, right? Because they're all monsters. Yeah. I think that's what it's going for. But why it's a car in the story she's telling in this dream world, the only thing I can think of is, much like the toys that are showing up, is that it's bleeding in from the real Rosaline's world and memory. But that's all I got.
Yeah.
Unless you could say, oh, this is a timeless thing that's still going on today, and that's why it's a car from, kind of present day. I say kind of because it looked a little bit old school, but obviously not fantasy fairy tale old school.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really understand what's going on, but I was just kind of going with it, all right, there's a car now. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not like it comes back up later. It's not a car comes sweeping around the trail to save the day or something. Or what if it was the car from the car?
The car, yeah. That would have been scary.
You think wolves are bad? Wait till you get a load of this.
It's a were car.
Oh. Well, so it's a man 28 days out of the month, and then for 3 days turns into a car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you seen the movie Titan?
I have, actually, yes.
Okay.
That's not about a weird car, though.
Yeah.
So it's about someone who has sex with a car. But that's not quite the same thing, then.
It's close enough.
Maybe if she has a baby, it'll be a car-human hybrid. Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, that's where you get Transformers.
Yeah.
From.
So, what... All right. So the next two stories are not told by the granny. They're told by Rosaline herself, the main character. And I think that also kind of symbolizes that she is growing up, that she's now the one starting to tell stories. And notably, her stories differ quite a bit from the one that her granny tells, because she tells her mother of a story first, where it's like a fancy wedding with like aristocracy.
Yes. This was like the big sequence I remembered from the movie.
Sure. Because there's some of them have got that white powdery face paint on, and they've got like, the silly wigs and whatever. So yeah, these two people are getting married.
Pretty similar to my wedding, honestly.
Oh, did you? You had the white curly haired wig on, did you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I like the idea that you were dressed like that, but you got married at like I don't know.
Sizzler.
So I was going to say McDonald's, so you weren't far off. Obviously. We don't have Sizzler here. I never said Sizzler, but
okay. I'll have to take you sometime. It's okay.
Anyone who wants to take me out and buy me dinner, I'm more than willing to let them do it.
Especially, do you have a lot of all-you-can-eat places out there? I don't know if that's just an American thing.
No,
it seems very American.
Yeah, there's some. I mean, I don't know if that phrase gets used, but typically it'll be some sort of buffet. The one that I like is Toby's Carvery, where you go up and you can ask for one of 4 types of meat, or you can get a little bit of all 4, or you can just get like a decent amount of 2, whatever you like. But you get everything else is basically just eat as much as you want style. So you can go up and get as much mashed potatoes and gravy as you want, or if you want veggies, want. I like that mainly because I really like unlimited mashed potato and gravy. It's like the dream.
It sounds good. Yeah,
it's the dream, baby. But yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, I think buffets in general aren't as great to me as just ordering something I want off a menu, because typically it tends to be mediocre overall.
Yeah. It depends if you want like a little bit of good food or a lot of like okay food.
Yeah, but you can't.
Hopefully, okay.
But as long as mashed potatoes are good, then they're good.
Yeah.
Right. Like.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I mean, you can't have bad mashed potatoes, sure. But at least if someone semi-professional is making them, they're probably fine. That said, like a Chinese buffet, not so much. Like I'd rather order just something off the menu. Like give me my actual dish. Anyway, why are we talking about food all of a sudden? This is your fault. The next story. So we're on this story. We're not finished this one yet. So the wedding's happening, and this woman comes in who's pregnant and seems to be a woman that the husband has previously been with, right? If not even
also
married.
Similar to my wedding.
Very good, Tim. And she basically comes in and everyone's scared of her. She's the one in charge, and basically she turns everyone else there into wolves. And the point of this story to some extent is that no, this woman is powerful. She's an enchantress. She actually takes the power back. The scary person in this story isn't the man or all the other people there. It's specifically the woman who's been wronged. So it feels like immediately her stories compared to her granny's stories is more of an optimistic. No, I can protect myself. I can have power. I can do things. I can be I can be the one who knocks. To put it in some modern parlay. It's the sort of thing though where I like the point of this story, but I don't know if I liked the actual watching of the story. Like I was like, okay, I like the idea of this. I like the point of it when she makes her point by the end, but like the actual wedding scene and then listening to this woman monologue before she finally turns them into wolves, I was just kind of like, yeah, okay, we can get on with this now. Like I don't know.
Yeah, it was interesting, and then the transformation definitely wasn't as good as like the first story we saw, because it basically just amounts to all of these people at the wedding turning into dogs again, which is fine. There's like some cool stuff there, but yeah, it definitely wasn't as good as the last one.
Yeah. Like I say, I like the point of it. I just didn't really enjoy the scene that much, and a lot of that's just down to taste more than anything else, to be honest. But it just wasn't quite for me.
I thought it was just interesting to see a very different, like, type of setting or something. Like, it still felt like it was part of this world, but we've been so used to seeing like, these like huts and like people with very like shabby clothing. I thought it was interesting to see like oh, this is what rich people in this world would look like. And then it's always good to see, like, you know, rich assholes get their comeuppance.
Yeah. And you see, like, afterwards, she does have a baby when she's in power, and all the wolves work for her. So it's very much
right.
Yeah, it's a very much empowerment fantasy kind of thing. And then the final story, which doesn't happen until we're already actually into the Red Riding Hood part of it, where she's met the huntsman, who's the wolf, and he's beat her to the granny's house, right? And they do a job here of actually making sure they say all the big lines, which is that, oh, what big eyes you have, oh, which big arms you have, what big teeth you have, all the better to eat you with. They do all those lines. But basically, once they get to that point, he turns into his wolf self. And the transformation isn't as fun as the first one, but it's better than the wedding transformation, right? You know, it's all right. It's pretty decent. Then it becomes this empowerment thing again, where he just kind of like sits there as like a dog, and she like sits down and kind of pets him, and that's actually who she tells the final story to. She tells the wolf that was supposed to eat her like the story. And she tells this story of a she-wolf, of a woman who's like part wolf, climbing out of the well in the center of her village, and like sort of like sneaking around, and she's kind of naked. Although I think, for modesty's sake, whoever the actress was, they put on what I can only describe as a big merkin, just to kind of like, you know, hide any of the actual like genital region. Sure. Admittedly, I'm not sure how like. I'm pretty sure whoever was playing this role still felt really naked, because that's not hiding that much. But I got that vibe based on what we're looking at. But she basically is like running her heads, you know, scurrying around the village, looking around, and she ends up at the church and runs into the old priest, who we did know from earlier from the other story. And he tries to be kind and give her something to wear, and tries to offer her, you know, some recluse or refuge, I mean to say. And she instead decides to go back to the well and back down to where she came from, because the idea is that she doesn't belong here anymore. Because she's turned into a wolf, she doesn't belong in the world she was in anymore. Again, the idea being, oh, once the girl has moved through that process of losing innocence and going into young adulthood and caring about all these things, there's no going back, is I think what that was getting at. So, like, okay, all right, that's all fine. So... yeah, I mean, that's the four stories as they come up, and then the wraparound of all that is, you know, all the stuff with her talking to her parents, this boy asking her to go for a walk, the boy trying to kiss her, yada, yada, yada. Do you have anything to say about the last story, actually, before I bring anything else up?
No, not really.
Okay.
I watched this movie in a couple of chunks, and then yeah, I was battling a pretty bad stomach bug when I was watching this last part. So it's a little hazy for me, but I remember not being as.
So you were just moving around like she was then, like the she-wolf. You were like sort of hunched over.
A little bit, yeah. A lot of just fetal position.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, yeah, I do remember not being as into this story as much as some of the earlier stuff, but it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a little bit more interesting to me in premise, just because I'm like, oh, this is very different from the other ones, because you're presenting me this like she-wolf character rather than giving me like, oh, someone's going to turn into a wolf, which is what a lot of the other ones kind of became. This was no, this is about this woman not belonging here anymore. So I really appreciated what it was saying more than I enjoyed watching it. But, you know, that's my running theme of this movie, I guess. So the ending, though, and we'll go back and talk about some other things if you want to, but the ending of the movie is that when everyone comes to the granny's place, actually, before we talk about the ending, when the big bad wolf goes to Granny's place and he like sort of gets in and she's like, oh, you're some demon beast, you're not my granddaughter. They fight, and there's a moment here where his tongue's sticking out, and it's this big long prosthetic tongue. And then when he like swipes at her, he just decapitates her in one swipe, but like her head's like porcelain. So it's like the granny was actually one of the dolls in her room or something like that. It's like, like a porcelain doll's like the ultimate little girl's like like toy. So the idea that the granny being killed represents like that part of her innocence going. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that fight because it was kind of nuts. But
I forget about the tongue thing. That was really cool. You turn into venom.
The parents and the villagers all come to the granny's place, and one wolf jumps out the window, and they're all like, "Oh, it's a wolf!" But then a second wolf jumps out the window, implying that Rosaline has become a wolf, and perhaps in some ways already was. But again, this is just representing her sexual awakening, yada yada yada. And the end of the movie goes back more into the surreal stuff because the wolves like run through the forest, more wolves join them, so it's like a whole pack of wolves running at this point. And then the end of the movie is them running into the modern day house and like barking outside her door as she wakes up, and then the main wolf jumps through the window, smashing like all of her toys to the ground, and then she's, you know, eaten alive kind of thing. So the ending's kind of like, I think the ending to me is saying like, okay, we've got all these like warning stories, but we've also got these stories from Rosaline about, oh, women can be powerful, they can take the power back, they can be the ones in charge, they can have some agency and say in who they are, and that's all good. But I think the ending's a warning of saying, but there is real danger. In the real world, it's one thing to like go in with this attitude, it's one thing to understand how you can be powerful if you can, you know, in situations where you can manage that and you can sort of protect yourself and whatnot, but there is ultimately still going to be wolves out there, there's still dangers. And obviously that's still very relevant today, and I think like the danger coming into the real world and it's suddenly been very scary at the end, when Rosaline in the dream world never really seemed that worried or scared, but whenever her granny was telling her stories where her mother was scared for her going into the woods or whatever, she never seemed to really be that concerned. Even when she meets the huntsman who's the wolf and he's being kinda creepy about how he talks to her, and he's like making all these, you know, implications, and he's trying to seduce her and all the rest of it, her attitude is very much, she never really becomes in awe of him, but she also never becomes scared of him, really. It's all very kind of, she plays it very straight, and I think the contrast here at the end is the real girl waking up in the bed and just being absolutely mortified that her innocence is going. I guess you could almost read it like she went to bed innocent and woke up like, that's it, womanhood's begun. It's time. And obviously, this is not the first time we've talked about a werewolf movie being symbolism for this kind of thing. Ginger Snaps.
It works, yeah.
Yeah, it's very much this too. But obviously, I think Ginger Snaps is my favorite werewolf movie, so I obviously love it in that context. Here, you know, all the fantasy stuff's not so much for me.
It is strange because, like, I understand the metaphor they're going for, but I don't know if it really does any favors to actually have it like showing up in the real world. Like maybe it'd be one thing if like she heard barking and she woke up and she saw a wolf outside or something. Like I could see something maybe a bit more subtle like that, but to literally have the dog like jumping through her window, it's like, all right, this maybe seems like a bit much, but I don't know.
Well, I don't know if it's literally happening in the real world.
I guess, but I don't know if we've really been shown enough to make that distinction. Sure. You know, I'm not saying it's like a big thing that was like bothering me, but I did kind of think like, all right, that's kind of weird. All right.
Yeah. Also, the family had a dog at the start, a nice big German Shepherd, I think.
Oh yeah.
And I did wonder, like, I thought that would come back up when we go back, because I assumed the whole movie that at the end would get at least a couple of scenes in the real world after she wakes up to kind of like put a capper on whatever the movie's been at that point. But it doesn't really happen, and I thought, oh, the dog might be there and it might represent the wolf she was thinking about in her dream or something. I don't know.
I don't know. Honestly, I wonder if you even really need the real world stuff. Like, I don't know, maybe it might be either maybe do a bit more stuff in the real world to give more context, or maybe just axe it completely. I don't know. It seems very weird and kind of unnecessary to me.
I get what you're saying. I think I'd prefer more of it rather than none of it, but I get what you're saying, that maybe either or is the choice.
Yeah, just 'cause the way it is now, to me, it just seems like, okay, we really don't know anything about this, and it just makes the movie one long dream sequence, which is kind of strange, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the thing is, though, is that her turn into the wolf doesn't feel like a plot point to me. Her turn into a wolf doesn't feel like, oh, she let him bite her and now she's a werewolf. To me, that just felt like more like complete symbolism. It felt like at that point the movie wasn't operating under like plot rules. It was operating completely under what does it mean. And
Sure.
you know, so everything at the end just feels that way to me. It doesn't feel like any. It's not a movie where it feels like stuff's actually happening so much as it just feels like it's a parable for stuff, which kind of makes sense because that's kind of the point of a fairy tale, in a lot of ways. But yeah. So I think it's really just out of taste how much you like that or not. Now, obviously, we did skip over a lot of the sort of interstitial parts and stuff. The one scene I know I wanted to bring up is that after the young boy takes her into the woods and tries to kiss her and she runs and hides a little bit, and then he sees like a dead cow, I think it is.
Oh, right, yeah.
And he runs into the village saying, wolves, wolves.
Wolf.
And David Warner, the father, is like, wait, where's my daughter? Did you leave my daughter out there with wolves? And he starts like shaking the boy and he hits him. And then his dad comes over and is like, what, don't hit my boy. And we get like just this like pathetic fight scene between these two guys as they start throwing punches. And eventually it's actually the mother who like throws water on them just as Rosaline appears in the background. She's completely safe and fine. But we get this, like, when I say pathetic, I don't mean it's pathetically done in terms of the movie. I just mean these characters feel pathetic as they're fighting. It feels, it feels like two, you know, poor examples of like just male, like masculine bullshit of like, you know, showing their who's got the better punch. You know, how dare you offend me, kind of thing.
They're no Wildcat.
Is that a Speed reference?
No, that's a DC.
Oh,
reference.
okay. No, because in Speed at one point Dennis Hopper says, tell that wildcat behind the wheel, and then later on they realise he's watching them because she's got a jersey from the college she went to, and the team was called the Wildcats, and that's why so when you said Wildcat, my brain went to Speed, even though I know who Wildcat is from DC.
He's a well-known fighter in DC.
In DC, to most people, probably not. He's pretty deep cut for non-DC comic fans.
I wanted to mention that. I think it's interesting. There's also a couple other little conversations with her and the mum that I kind of like, because there's a scene early on where she kind of like hears her parents having sex, and the next day she says to her mum, "Hey, does he ever hurt you?" And she's like, "Who? What are you talking about?" It's like, "Dad, does he ever hurt you? Like after?" And she's like, "What? No. What are you talking?" And this is based on what our gran said about, after they get sex, the real beast comes out. And the mother kind of like offers up this opposing viewpoint of saying, there's some beast in men for sure, but that like thinking that women can't equal that beast themselves is a silly idea, and that kind of foreshadows what happens at the end as well. Of like. That's what the empowerment ultimately is. It's like, hey, you can be a beast too. Like you can match them at it, kind of thing.
Could even be an altered beast if you want.
That is such a random video game reference. I don't even know what to say to that.
You're talking about beasts. What do you expect me to do?
I don't know. You could say something about, like the mother, like. Promoting these ideas in her daughter to hopefully give her a more equality than she had, in the older generation or something like that. The idea that the granny's like super like, no, men are just dangerous and we can't trust any of them, and then the wife is like, no, there are some good men, and if there is beasts we can equal that. And then the daughter actually fulfills that by becoming a beast at the end. Like, I don't know, make any points about any of those things.
That's your job.
That's my job. Okay. All right. Fine. I think I've mostly talked about what I want to talk about, though, to be fair. I don't... Because, like I say, there's so many little things as the movie goes on. I guess the other thing we should maybe mention is just the wolf towards the end, the huntsman. I wasn't a big fan of this character. I thought the performance was a bit campy for me. I just thought, I suppose in a lot of ways, if you're doing the big bad wolf, he probably should be chewing the scenery a little bit, okay? I kind of get that, right? But I don't know, something about him just felt, I don't know. I wasn't compelled. I wasn't entertained by him. I was more just like, oh, you're just here. Like, I was expecting something more interesting from when the main wolf, the big bad wolf of Red Riding Hood, when that wolf showed up, I thought there was going to be someone more interesting than just this kind of typically pretty posh guy who, wants to kiss her. I thought there'd be more to it than that.
That's fair. Yeah. I don't know. I thought it kind of fit in the movie as a whole, because I feel like a lot of the other wolves or bad guys, have also been kind of,
yeah,
a little over the top. Again, I don't think this person maybe is as memorable as, like, the guy in the first story or whatever, but it didn't bother me.
I mean, I get the point is that, like, yes, who you think is a charming, handsome man can be a monster underneath, right? That's kind of the point of it. But I don't know, I was expecting something a bit more, I don't know, like, I think because this is the one that potentially is going to tempt her and actually trick her, that it would be a bit more conniving and a bit more interesting to watch. I'm not saying I wanted the ending to change with her, like, not being able to overcome him by the end. Like, I get that. But I think the downside of her never showing any fear at all is that it means that there's never really any tension in any of this. And I think I spent the movie thinking that, oh, she's been so confident all movie. I thought that when she does confront the big bad wolf, there might finally be some tension and she might actually at least be a little scared. Still overcome it. Still, like, make the points that it wants to make. But it doesn't do that. And I'm not saying that's the wrong choice, but it did leave me feeling like there was no tension in any of those scenes. It felt just kind of like we were just going through the motions at a certain point.
That's fair. I mean, at that point, it's speeding towards the end or whatever.
All right, well, I got nothing else, Tim. So if you got nothing else you'd like to add, we can do the wrap up stuff. We can, first of all, best scene of the movie, Tim. Have you got a pick?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy. It's that first transformation scene. Again, it's a really cool visual. It's an interesting idea of, like, I think, I don't know if this is, like, the first movie that's done it. Like, I feel like I've seen the thing before where, like, someone will rip their skin off and to, like, show, like, a wolf underneath or whatever. But
yeah, I think I've seen that part of it before to some extent, but never like the body then transforming after. Usually it's like the skin rips off and they've already got the snout, which is silly as well.
Yeah.
But it, that's usually, I think that's what I've seen before.
But yeah, no, it was just a really solid visual and entertaining.
Yeah, same scene, I think, to be honest. Like it gave me hope that we were going to get effectively an anthology of interesting werewolf stories, and that's not quite what it was. I think. Yeah, like there's definitely some standout little moments or like how they chose to do certain things, but I mean that's definitely the scene that sticks out the most. So, yeah. All right, MVP of the movie.
Ooh, MVP. Let's give it up for Grandma. Our girl Ange making it all the way to 96. But no, I mean I thought she did a good job as an old woman, so
okay. I don't think that's really giving her much praise, to be honest. You're saying she just played the type of person that she more or less was by this time. I think she was hitting 60 around here. Part of me wants to say the effects, like the practical effects people, but I mean, if I'm going with an actor or character, it probably is the lead. Like she does. Yeah. Like have the charisma to like carry the movie. She does like stand out in her scenes that she's in. The movie does feel like it revolves around her, so I can't really fault her performance. So yeah, there you go.
No, she was good. And, yeah, it's kind of a shame that she didn't do much else because she was definitely good in this movie.
Yeah. All right, what are you rating it, Tim?
I think I'm gonna give it a 6.5. I do like it. I think there's some really cool like practical effects and werewolf stuff, which a lot of the time that really helps for me in a werewolf movie. But yeah, and I don't mind the main story, but I do think it is maybe hampered down a little bit much by the structure. Like I wish it was either maybe like a straight anthology movie, or I don't know, maybe it didn't like, I don't know, do so much with like making it a little confusing, being like, oh wait, all right, so there's the real world and there's these dreams and then these other stories or whatever. But I mean that's a minor complaint though, because I still mostly enjoyed the movie. But yeah, I think I'll go with a 6.5.
Yeah. I'm not actually going that much lower, to be honest. I think I'm going to go with a 6 because I think it's fairly well made. I think the practical effects are cool. I think there is standout moments and scenes. I think ultimately the setting and the type of tone that it's going for just isn't really to my taste. So I did find it a little bit of a slog at points to get through. I appreciate the metaphor, I appreciate what it's doing, but something like Ginger Snaps for me does the symbolism of what this is talking about a lot more interestingly for me, or that's certainly more to my taste at the very least. So that's what I am going with. So there you go. That is In the Company of Wolves. With that said, I'll tell you what's coming next week and some of the bonus content you can get. Next week, we'll be looking at Immaculate, another bigger movie from this year to get to. And worth mentioning that is the final episode before the Octoberthon 2024. And that'll, if you're not familiar with the Octoberthon, we put out not just one episode a week, we put out not just 2 episodes a week, we'll put out at least 3, maybe even 4 episodes a week for the month of October. We squeeze in as many as we can. There'll be extra bonus episodes on Patreon. There's usually 1 a month, of course, but there'll be 2 or 3 in October. So please do support us over there if you want to get access to bonus episodes. And of course, even more stream segments where we do like top 5s, top 10s, or silly discussion topics, or sometimes we'll just, like, if there's been some interesting trailers, we might talk about those. Just kind of whatever. We just talk about different horror things and that, whatever we feel like doing a couple of times a month. So check all that on Patreon or via YouTube membership if you prefer to do it that way. But that is the show. So like, subscribe, ding the bell, tell us in the comments what you think of the movie, all that stuff. But that is me. That is Tim. We're done. This is Screws After Midnight. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.